Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com with the latest climate prophecies. Experts say Earth could be alien to humans by the year 2500. Shocking images reveal how the Amazon will be barren, the American Midwest tropical, and India too hot to live if CO2 emissions continue to rise. Apparently they sent a photographer almost 500 years into the future to generate this story. But actually there's nothing new about it. Greta's ancestor Svante Arrhenius told the same story over 100 years ago. He predicted that fig trees were going to be growing in Chicago and Siberia would become the greatest farming country in the world due to global warming. Greta's father was named after Arrhenius, and he predicted that Earth would get close to the boiling point of water. And 100 years later, Stephen Hawking agreed with him. He said Earth was going to have boiling oceans due to global warming. So apparently if we keep burning fossil fuels for the next 500 years, we're going to be in very serious trouble. But Arrhenius also said 100 years ago that the world was going to run out of oil during the current generation and we're going to have to rely on solar energy. In 1911, the head chemist at the Department of Agriculture said, "Coal and wood will disappear from the earth. Coal already is dwindling alarmingly, and the most ambitious efforts of the foresters will not forestall the final obliteration of the forests." And he said that we were going to replace fossil fuels with wind power. For more than 100 years, climate alarmists have been saying we're going to burn up if we keep using fossil fuels. They've also been saying that we're about to run out of fossil fuels. And for at least 110 years, they've been telling us that we're just about to switch over from fossil fuels to wind and solar power. In 1977, President Carter and the New York Times said the world would run out of oil by the year 2010. That didn't happen, but experts now say the world's going to run out of fossil fuels by the year 2060. So climate experts say we're about to run out of fossil fuels and also that we're going to keep burning them for the next 500 years. They claim that increased levels of CO2 will turn the Amazon jungle into a desert. We don't have to guess what Earth would be like at higher levels of CO2 because we have hundreds of millions of years of Earth history. Atmospheric CO2 peaked 540 million years ago during the Cambrian era. The level of CO2 was 15 times higher than now, and that was when the most rapid expansion of life occurred on planet Earth. Corals and shellfish evolved 540 million years ago when CO2 levels were very high. Yet climate alarmists are claiming now that the small increase in CO2 over the past century is killing corals and shellfish. It's unfortunate that climate alarmists can't take a trip down to their local natural history museum and see what life was actually like at much higher levels of CO2. Plants love CO2. It forms the very basis of their existence. Had Greta not been skipping school, she might have learned about the process of photosynthesis. Chlorophyll is what makes plants green, and it combines sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to produce plant growth. Our forests are made up almost entirely of chemicals derived from carbon dioxide and water. NASA's satellites show that Earth has gotten greener as the level of CO2 has increased in the atmosphere over the past 30 or so years. Now let's look at their claim that the Midwest is going to turn into a tropical climate. This is at odds with NASA's Dr. Hansen's prediction from 1988. When he started the global warming scare before Congress in 1988, he said that the Midwest was going to get very hot and dry. He made that forecast in 1988, and since then the Midwest has had their wettest years on record. And as far as heat goes in the Midwest, the National Climate Assessment shows that peak temperatures in the Midwest have plummeted over the last century. The Midwest used to get a lot of days over 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius, peaking in the year 1936. But over the past century, the frequency of 95-degree days in the Midwest has plummeted, with recent years being the coolest on record. During the 1930s, almost every official thermometer in the Midwest would reach 95 degrees Fahrenheit sometime during the summer. But the extent of hot weather has plummeted in the Midwest over the past 90 years, and recent years have been at a record low, with less than 40% of stations reaching 95 degrees Fahrenheit sometime during the summer. The average summer maximum temperature in the Midwest has dropped about 4 degrees Fahrenheit over the last 90 years. The Midwest climate is much better now than it was 90 years ago, when millions of climate refugees fled the Midwest and the Great Plains and moved to California. But actual evidence doesn't seem to hold any standing in climate science. The Midwest is getting cooler and wetter, but climate experts say they're headed into another dust bowl. It appears that climate science is completely oblivious to observational evidence. Climate alarmists keep making ridiculous predictions about the future. In March of 2010, they were predicting that the climate of Britain would become Mediterranean. And a few months later, Britain was having one of their coldest and snowiest winters on record. It's actually been over 120 years since Nobel laureate Knut Angstrom explained what was wrong with Arrhenius theories. Greta's relative Arrhenius didn't recognize water vapor as being a greenhouse gas. He considered carbon dioxide to be responsible for the entire greenhouse effect. This was a ridiculous mistake by Arrhenius. And Angstrom demonstrated experimentally 120 years ago that varying the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere had very little effect on radiative transfer. An entire field of junk science was created by Arrhenius' error over 120 years ago and still lives on today. Arrhenius also believed that he could make children smarter by electrifying them. He wanted to wire up Swedish school children's desks. It's no wonder that Greta didn't want to go to school.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Toto's been pulling back the curtain on this clown show for the past 13 years. You can visit him, Kyrie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.